just hit record. It's great to have you along, and today we wanted to talk about challenges for facilitating action groups, and we especially wanted Rachel and Taffy along as observers, because you guys have been out there supporting facilitators and observing and doing 360s and things like that, so kind of have a good feel for what's happening. And Paul was the other observer, but he unfortunately has had a clash, so he's not able to make it, which is a shame, but that is all good. Oh, and we've got Wayne. Hi, Wayne.
Hi, how are you? Sorry, I'm late.
Good. That's all good. You look like you're parked up on a roadside somewhere.
Yeah, I'm about 10 minutes from home, or from the office rather. I didn't quite make it.
Oh, you did well though. You had enough signal somewhere, so
Yep.
Good work. With a relatively smaller group of us, I think it's still important. We will just check in and say hi and make sure everybody knows each other. Well, I think most of us do. So wanted you to say hi and what's your top challenge? So hopefully you've had a chance to have a think about it, but what is your top challenge? And if not, make something up. Top of mind is always good. So I'm going to pick on you, Briar, to start. So go, Briar.
Am I allowed to say my top challenge is keeping myself out of the fridge when I work from home? Is it appropriate?
You're allowed to say that. I'm not sure how much we can help you, but you know.
To be honest, I feel kind of a bit disjointed from the action group stuff and the challenges with, even though I've again started a group in South Westland that I've been working with, but it sort of felt like we barely got started, and it's kind of going to be quite hard to keep it going, just purely due to cost of getting people down there, and they're not the most, I mean, there are people there that are reasonably well off, but they're not the most well off farm businesses, so it's quite hard for them to sort of front up with the money.
Yeah. So that's quite some big challenges around just location and so yeah, some logistics around distances and things like that. Okay, getting people to action group. I'm just not jotting these down as we go. Cool. What about you, Sarah?
Probably for me, the good old communication, getting them to actually reply to stuff when you're trying to organise a day, and engaging with those who don't always respond. And then the other one that Briar just mentioned around cost, around continuing with groups and getting them to be willing to pay for a facilitator to run the group and understand the value of that. They understand the value that the group gives them, but they're not necessarily that keen to want to pay for that facilitation.
Yeah. No, that's cool. That's fair. Okay. Wayne, top of mind challenge from you. Oh, you'll have to unmute.
I guess one of the challenges is getting the group, trying to plan reasonably well in advance, settling on dates, and then getting the group to actually stick to those dates is probably the challenge. My diary is probably more my challenge than anything.
Yep. So finding a date that works for you and them.
That's right. Yeah, and then sticking to it.
Yep.
So that's probably the one challenge top of mind at the moment.
Fair enough.
Like, my group's been lucky enough that there's a Hiranui District Landcare funding, so they're able to latch on to some of that, I think.
Oh, cool. Okay. That's handy.
It is. They were prepared to fund it themselves, but this will soften the blow.
Nice. Nothing like a little bit of help. So that's cool. Awesome. Taffy, challenge that's, because you're a facilitator, you've got a facilitator hat as well as an observer hat. Oh, need to get you off mute as well.
No, sorry, that's my mistake. Being consistent. That's
Tell us more about that.
ongoing
Yeah.
challenge. So what I mean by that is I've got days when I'm onto my game and I'm running groups well, and then with some groups is probably a little bit is the personality or the group, where the group is in terms of its life cycle, and you kind of like drop into that. I'll go with the flow a little bit because that's just where this group is at. Yeah.
Yeah. No, that's fair. Cool. What about for you, Rachel? Because you've also got a facilitator and observer hat.
Yeah, I agree with everything that everyone has said. I have experienced all of those challenges and see it in other facilitators that that I work with. For me, for some of my groups, they were reasonably early adopters, and in their business, they or themselves, they have committed to a lot. They're often involved in farming for profit groups or discussion groups that meet monthly or very regularly. And so it's trying to find a date and a format that works for busy people. And then sometimes I feel as we've got nearer the end date of them as an action group, that they've let it slide to a lower priority, even knowing that it will just have to fit what else they've got going on attitude. And I've really struggled with that, or struggled to get days going.
Yeah. No, that's fair. Cool. Excellent. Oh, I can see Nick is joining us. Hi, Nick. Welcome along. Yep, you can hear us, Nick? Maybe? Okay, I'm going to keep going and assume that Nick can hear us. Awesome, great to have you along. Brendan, great to have you on the call. What's a challenge that that you see?
Yeah, I guess I'm come at it from a different level or different lens.
Yeah.
And I guess it's probably highlighted by this call we're in right at the moment, that people are facing challenges with facilitating action groups, and that's no surprise really, because there'll be a number of challenges at any particular time, and depending on what's going on, etc., and where you're at as a facilitator. So I think the biggest challenge we've probably had as a program is to be able to have an engaging support activities such as this, that people are able to slot in within their busy calendars. So in a nutshell, I guess the challenge is, how do people as real professionals / facilitators allow themselves to make the time to be engaged with other facilitators to help their learning and sharing experience, to help them deal with these challenges and become better as facilitators.
Yeah. Yep. No, that's fair. And Courtney, it'd be great to hear from you as well. And also just to say, for everyone who hasn't met Courtney, this sounds a bit silly, but Courtney is the new Ben, new Dusty, new you name it. The mantle has descended on Courtney, so she's on the end of the phone, and hopefully may have already spoken to some of you before, but yeah.
Yeah, I think that I've probably got actually quite similar to what a lot of the facilitators have been saying, in that there's a little bit of pushback from farmers when I talk to them about their groups going forward. You know, they don't necessarily want to pay, or I'm getting a lot of people asking for more funding, but also the communication with the farmers is always a really big struggle for me, just trying to get them on the phone and trying to get them to call me back, or whatever. Yeah, I mean, they're very busy people, and I know I'm always I can never know if I'm calling at a bad time, but it is a real struggle trying to get them on the phone sometimes.
Oh, yeah, it's not high on the list sometimes to tick off the invoice or whatever, but yes, that's fair. Nick, can you hear us now?
Yeah, I can now. Yeah.
Woohoo, well done.
I'm not sure why I couldn't before, but anyway, I can now. Yeah.
Fantastic. Welcome along. It's great to have you here. We've just been sharing a top challenge from facilitating action groups. And I know you've got, well, a reasonably new action group, although it's been going for a bit. But any challenge that you'd like to share?
I mean, I think, yes, so firstly, apologies for coming in a bit late. There was a couple of other things that were a bit pressing. So, I mean, I guess, and I just heard the tail end of the other conversation, I think is that they, having been funded, the prospect of going unfunded going forward does cause some concern. Now they've indicating they're prepared to pay something towards it, but obviously they're going to go looking elsewhere to see where else they can get support. So yeah, I mean, I'm relatively new to this. I've only been working with the group for a short period of time, so probably some of the challenges I have are a bit different to others, and it's a relatively new group, so they're very enthusiastic at the moment, and apart from the challenge of trying to track them down at certain times, that there's not too many other concerns at this point in time. Yeah, I'd say that's probably.
Yep, because you've got a lot of arable guys in your group mixed.
Yeah, so all except for one of the group members is predominantly arable, and there's one who has is solely livestock, which is actually really good for the mix. And I think it's something that going forward with the way that agriculture is probably going to trend in this country, that mixed farms and having those mixtures of views is really critical. And I'd actually love to have more people that were solely pastoral in the mix to give it a better perspective on some things.
That's fair. Cool. Okay. While Simon is joining, and hopefully we'll be able to connect, Lab, anything that springs to mind from you, given that you've done a lot of the training and been on a lot of these calls, so anything that springs to mind?
Brendan stole my thunder. That was mine as well. How do we get facilitators to actually see value in getting together and sharing their experiences and learning from each other? Because to me, and this is what this session is a little bit about, isn't it? That everyone faces challenges, and so the best resource we have is each other, because all of the facilitators we have are breaking ground. This is new stuff, and so they're creating new PPK all the time, and so we need to mine that and capture it and get it shared, because a solution to lots of these problems probably exist within the group, the cohort, if you like. So that's my challenge. It's how do we get them to see value in actually turning up to these things and whatever else, or are we doing the right things? I think we need to find how we can best support them.
Yeah, no, that's fair. Cool. And welcome, Simon. Great to have you along. We've just been going around sharing a top challenge, a key challenge for facilitating an action group or action groups. So anything you'd like to share, if you had a chance to think about that question.
Lots of challenges, Denise, but specific challenges. I guess it's holding, keeping the group accountable over time, I think, is probably the main one. And I think just handling the change in dynamic over time and just expecting to be changed, because there is always change. The group's always change. Some people drop off and some people come in, and it's all very well for 3 years being really enthusiastic, but continuing that momentum requires a sort of an evolution, I guess, of your group, and it's being able to sort of accept those changes along the way and expect them and handle them, I guess, is probably a challenge.
Yep. No, that's cool. Thanks, Simon. So what I'm going to do now is I'm going to chuck some of these up on the whiteboard. So hopefully you can see that. And what we're going to do is then do a quick, so I'm just going to try and capture these. And then what we'll do is we'll choose a couple to focus on. And then I'm going to send you into a couple of breakouts to share any thoughts, any stories that you might have that might help with this challenge. And we'll come back and report back on those. And we'll just see how we go in terms of time. But we'll start maybe with the top two. So what I heard was some challenges from Briar around running an action group in remoter locations, and so costs for doing this. I heard communication and engaging with the group when they don't respond, from Sarah, and some costs as well. So being prepared to pay for facilitator, etc. Post funding. If I haven't quite got these captured, please feel free to speak up and say something. From Wayne, I heard about planning in advance and sticking to those plans, among others. And you had some funding, so that helped with some of the transition to not being funded. Taffy talked about being consistent. When your group goes up and down and you go up and down, and Rachel, you talked about finding times and dates that suit when the priority isn't as high. So is it okay if I stick that with this one here? So if I put those two together, so dealing with action group becoming less of a priority. So if I put those two together, hopefully that's vaguely readable. Brendan and Lab, I am going to put yours together as supporting facilitators in a way that adds value. Is that a fair summary? Yep, getting a nod. Courtney, that was a communication one as well, so you're happy that that's kind of captured? Yep, awesome. Nick, you talked about timing and getting in touch, so that's communication too. Yep, awesome. Labs covered, and Simon, keeping the group accountable over time. And dealing with the, how did you put it? The evolution required with a group. So we've got 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7 there. Hopefully you can go up and you can go click on your More button, and there should be an annotate option. And that means you'll get a little drawing toolbar, and there'll be a stamp option. And in the stamp option, there's a tick. So, or a star, I don't mind. You can choose a tick or a star. And you've got 2 votes. So I'd love you to jump in and vote. So, and just literally put a star or something next to the one that, undo. That was bad. I'll put that back on. So that we can choose a couple to start with. If you are having trouble with that, please yell out. And I'll put this back up.
Yeah, I don't seem to have a more button, Denise. So.
Oh.
Neither do I.
No, oh, okay. So we're
I think for people that aren't Denise, it's at the top under view options. There's an annotate.
Yep.
Yeah.
View options. Does that work?
Yep. And then it says annotate, and it should, and you can move that little box around so it doesn't block the view.
Yep. And I will just put in that one in advance. And Wayne, just checking in with you, if you're on your phone, you're able to do this. Yep, awesome, thank you. All right, everyone had a chance to use their 2 votes. You will need to click out of them for it to show up. So I'm seeing keeping the group accountable over time with 6. And supporting facilitators as our top 2. Yep. Awesome. All right. I am going to copy those into our, I'll do that in a minute instead of. All right. Save that, so I've got it. And close out of that. So we've got supporting facilitators and keeping the group accountable over time and dealing with the evolution required. So what we're going to do is split into 2 breakout rooms, and I'm going to get you in your breakout rooms to pick one of those topics, share any stories or ideas that you've got that you think would help, and I'll get you to capture any ideas or advice that you think would be helpful. So I'm going to put into the chat box for you the instructions. So in the chat box, I've got, if anyone's got a story that they think that would be helpful, share what are the main ideas that those stories or advice are telling us, and then there's a Google Docs to capture that idea. And I'm going to go into the Google Docs and write those 2 challenges up. And each breakout group, you can choose both to do the same one, or you can choose to do a different one. Let's see, I'm putting Brendan, Lab, Nick, Simon, and Wayne together. So your room 1, apologies, room 2, you get to choose, room 1 gets to choose. Which one would you like to tackle? Anyone from room 1, Brendan, Lab, Nick, Simon, Wayne? Brendan's going to say facilitators.
do the facilitator one.
Sweet. Okay, so room 2, Briar, Courtney, Rachel, Sarah, and Taffy. If you can think about the challenge around keeping groups accountable and facilitating as groups evolve over time. So, and we'll share these. So I'm going to send you off into your breakout room, click the Google Docs link, and I will put those challenges in so you'll have those. And you'll have a bit over 5 minutes, but I'll check in and see if you need a little bit more time. Cool.
Denise, quick question, Denise. So
Yep.
What are the ideas, that solutions? Well, are they potential solutions that we're looking for? Okay, yep, sounds good.
Yep. Anything that just points us in helpful direction, you know, anything that's going to support and help deal with that challenge, basically. Yeah. Awesome. All right. Have fun having a chat.
Yep.
I think that's a really good idea, Sarah, because I guess we expect the group culture to persist when there's other changes going on, and actually acknowledging that group culture is to be protected by some of those things that you talked about is really positive. Because I guess as facilitators, we're so aware of the end that we're thinking to a point that we're allowing that change and allowing the dynamics potentially to change. But I never really thought about how we can strengthen that culture, even though we're near the end, if that makes sense. We were so focused on it at the start. Good idea.
Yes, I'll chip in a little bit. I think part of having good ground rules and probably going back
in what I do in my day-to-day work. So spending time training for something that is very minor and is really designed just to get this group going so I can exit is even harder to say that you're going to spend time doing training just so that you can exit and someone else can come on stream. However, having said that, getting someone else up to speed is something I really want to see happen. And the young person, which I haven't identified yet, and hopefully sometime soon someone's going to identify it because I don't want to be there in the end 6 months from now, is going to be pretty critical. And having some way of the right sort of framework for that person to be able to engage and keep up to speed in short, sharp spurts as something like this, I think is going to be really important. And to learn from the experiences of the other people that have been there and done it is going to be really, really critical. So I'm not sure that I've provided any solutions. I've just provided the perspective from where I see it. But I think, having said all that, I think one of the solutions lies back with the groups themselves, is that we don't, or haven't to date, and I don't know whether you do within RMPP because I've only been there such a short time, go back to those guys in the group and say, hey, was that a good job that happened today, and what needs to improve to make it better? And I tried asking my guys that, and they all sort of nod and say, oh no, it was good. But, and again, I guess part of the problem there is they haven't got anything to compare it with because all they've had's me. So
and then that can help get into the commitment to the funding side of things as well, if they've got buy-in to what the goals and objectives are. Yeah.
Another thing I'm finding with some of my groups is having dates locked in earlier, I think, is their not self-motivation, but is maybe is the focus in their eyes might be coming off action groups, actually having a longer lead-in time and more communication is helping. Almost, it feels a little bit more like parenting again. But I guess that's part of our role sometimes, to really drive it.
I feel like a mother all the time, and I've never been a mother. But whenever I'm at these groups, I feel like I'm rallying kids.
Yeah.
And emailing, telling them to do their homework. But in a way, they don't mind that. They sometimes feel like they need it, and they're generally appreciative of it all the time. So they're like, thank God you're here being a mother, otherwise nothing would get done. Yeah.
I love it. Do you need another minute or two? How are you doing?
I can quickly say one thing. I was talking to a farmer last week or the week before, and their group
I actually learnt by going out with senior consultants in my business and doing a small part of the facilitation. So you took over a part of the day, and that got you in front of people. It got you building those skills, but it also got you observing the senior consultants in that role who were doing a facilitation role. And I wonder whether that might be an option for some of the younger, newer facilitators to actually go out with some that are a bit more established. And not to say that they're doing everything right, but perhaps at the end you have a feedback session both ways, because you can learn either way. But they might take over a bit of the role for a part of the day, with facilitating part of a day. I don't know. It's probably a bigger investment on their behalf, but it means that perhaps well, 3 guys you've got here in this group are reasonably well heeled through their career and probably have a little less to gain than someone that's just starting out in facilitation. But we're attending these courses, so we recognise that there is something that we can learn as well and improve on the way through. I also find that the facilitation skills aren't just for the big group, it's for handling a small family group and that sort of thing, that it's actually really beneficial. So I guess I invest my time for all through my role. Yeah.
One more minute. I'm about to close the rooms. So if everyone's had a chance to have a go.
Have you been typing at all, Brendan? I haven't. Just
Oh, someone can talk to a few notes. Nice. I'm just waiting for room one who were. Oh, here we go. Welcome back, everyone. Excellent.
Sorry, Brendan, I stole all the time.
Good.
Excellent. Okay. So let's hear a few of your ideas. So group two, I'll just share, because I know you did put some notes in. Share the document. I will share this afterwards too. So you guys talked about keeping the group accountable over time and dealing with the evolution of the group and changes that are needed. So someone from that group want to give us a couple of highlights or a couple of themes that came through from that? I'll volunteer someone.
I took the notes. I can try and say what
we can't read your writing.
What was? Oh.
Nice, you can't read your writing. You better present it yourself.
So we had a few different things brought up. I really liked what Sarah brought up about how, although her group hasn't had a lot of change in sort of their direction and things, they are looking to go forward into a self-funded model. But as part of that, they're going to bring on a couple of extra people to help with the cost. And what her group has done is whenever they've looked at somebody to bring into the group, the rest of the group has to unanimously agree to bring the person in. And even if one person doesn't want them, then that means no. And it's sort of highlighted how the group probably values the culture that they've developed. And yeah, it just sort of seemed like quite a nice way for the group to keep going with the same sort of values. Yeah, and Rachel pitched in there with how much she enjoyed that as well, and how keeping the dynamic strong was just such a vital part of the group. Yeah, and then we kind of just discussed it from there, which is all those little notes.
Anyone want to add anything else from that group? Thanks, Courtney. Oh, Taffy, if you're talking, you're on mute. Not sure if you are though.
Sorry. Denise. So the other thing we talked about was having some focus areas or goals with your group and then reviewing those with time. And that just helps ensure that, everybody is still getting value.
Yep.
And the focus of the group, what people got into the group for. And if things have changed, you can capture it and then refocus your energy into something else that's more relevant and will keep giving the group value.
Nice. Cool. Other group, any ideas that you thought of while you were listening to that in terms of keeping groups accountable over time?
I guess I've got a question, Denise.
Yeah.
Interesting that that came through as groups not necessarily valuing facilitation, yet I picked up there that there was a real strong culture that had sort of developed within the group. Did the group have a view on how that cultures have developed and evolved and why they're in that position of strength?
Not necessarily, I don't think. I mean, I guess this is one of the groups where the ongoing funding challenge isn't there because they're willing to continue in that self-funded capacity. So they do value the group, they value the facilitation, and they value everything that they get out of it. So I guess that's where, the groups that we have trouble with getting them to understand that value with the payment of the facilitation, maybe the culture isn't quite the same. So certainly this particular group, they do have a really good group culture that they don't want to see that be lost because they all get along really well, and they just don't want to have somebody come into the group who might disrupt that. And while sometimes disruption is good, they quite like what they've got. So I don't know if that's answered you.
I think you did answer in saying that they value the facilitation. So
yeah. And at the moment they want to continue with me as the facilitator, so they value the facilitation that I'm doing as well. So that's that value was there for this particular group.
Brendan, I think as individuals, quite often we're not that great at attributing where the benefit actually came from and what is a reasonably crucial role. I've seen groups where they've had a facilitator, they've said, well, we think we can run without a facilitator, and the group falls apart because they don't actually attribute the value of that. And part of that might be our fault for not subtly reinforcing it over time. And what benefits they're getting from it. So I think part of it's not attributing the benefit, therefore they don't value the benefit.
Yeah, it's interesting you say that, Wayne, because I guess over the last couple of calls we've had, it's been around that sort of process and how do you allow farmers to come to those positions, and the value creation framework and those stories and that process that underpin supporting that come out of the group has been really useful for a lot of facilitators.
And Taffy mentioned that review of how the group's going and sort of that renegotiation periodically, refocusing the group. Are we achieving the objectives that we set out to? Are those objectives still relevant? I think it's really important. I think for some of the groups where the topic has been very tight, it's been a little difficult to probably renegotiate those and keep a group together, and I can understand that. Probably where the group has had a bit broader brief, that renegotiation and moulding of where you go and recommitment to a group's probably easier.
Yeah, you've got a bit of scope to move. That's fair. We're going to keep moving back to group one now. I'm keeping an eye on the time. So who from group one was willing to share a couple of thoughts, themes, ideas that came out of supporting facilitators and how to make sure that we're offering value in that space?
Wayne was going to.
But he's just dropped out. Nice. But you have talked now, Brendan, so off you go.
Simon was just saying that really, as facilitators, they should be practicing this a bit more in these types of sessions. So I'm happy to hand it off, actually.
Nice.
There you go, Simon.
Beautifully done. Go, Simon.
It's actually facilitating, not just passing the buck, Brendan. There's actually a difference, just quietly.
We'll have to work on that.
Yes. So from the facilitators in our group, quite a lot of it was that the facilitators, as facilitators, that's just a small part of what most of us do. And it's a real time conundrum between spending the personal time to be better at facilitation versus, what reward we get from facilitation, I guess. It's probably a pretty selfish view, I guess, but it is behind the scenes. That's the conundrum that's there. Spending enough time to still be relevant and still have good techniques versus what you or how much of your time you actually spend facilitating as a consultant, that is. So what we came out with, I guess, at the end was that we're all there on the call because we value the time to pick up something potentially new that we can utilize and use. And probably as far as time goes, being able to put aside a short period of time and getting maximum value out of it in these types of sessions is actually probably quite good. I've probably gone completely off script because I haven't got that in front of me, but I think that's a start anyway, and anybody else that was on the call can probably fill in around the edges.
Nice. Anyone else from that group that wanted to chip in?
I think one thing that was quite a good point was touched on was with Nick, what Nick had to say, and also I know you're doing this, Simon, within your business, is where there's the younger type of person or the inexperienced type of person that can get into facilitation and creating those opportunities to work alongside other experienced facilitators, therefore putting some focus on allowing them to build their facilitation practice and also get them engaged in this type of support framework would be a really helpful thing to do.
Cool. And Nick, I think you'd unmuted. Was there something you wanted to add?
I was just going to, Brendan and Simon have done such a good job of facilitating. They've taken the comments forward and I don't need to bother. That was, I was going to add something around the younger people.
Yep. Nice. Thanks, Nick. Awesome.
I just a point that I've kind of hit on is that, and Brendan hit on it when we started our discussion, that we're kind of dealing with a very similar issues here, and there's probably some universal kind of truths that apply to both of them, and the one of having a choice and being time poor and seeing value in the time versus what I can do to make money or what I can do to farm a farm or whatever it is. And it occurs to me that it's the group that creates the value, not the facilitator. And so, and that I think covers both situations. It's the group themselves that create the value. It's just finding the way to get them to cooperate with each other and to understand the value that they are creating. So we can't invent ways of attracting people. I think it's a kind of a false marketing kind of concept, is that we create stuff that other people will buy, or we know what to do, or we think we can come up with ideas to attract people, but really it's the groups and the particular people that have to come up with the value themselves. And so I guess we just need to get out there and ask people what works. And I kind of taking on board the short, sharp thing, but maybe there is other media we can use. And, we can build on the small groups that we do get just by inviting people to, as you say, to come and facilitate, to practice it themselves. You know, I think, yeah, I just think we need to spread the word kind of thing.
Sorry, yep, go Meg.
I was going to comment in relation to the culture and values comments that came up from the previous group. I guess one of the things when I came into working with the group I'm with, 4 of them had been through a culture and values assessment as part of the Our Land and Water program. And having that in front of me so that I knew what their thinking was actually really beneficial, because you could understand a lot about them before you even started and what their values were likely to be. Now, and those 4 actually happen to be quite aligned in their values. Whether it's useful at the whole group, you know how similar they are across the group would constrain the range of conversation. But I think that understanding something about their culture and values is really important, or was really helpful.
Definitely. Yeah, that's cool. Oh, I'm losing my place. Understand. I just wanted to capture that. Understanding culture and values. Cool. Thank you for that. Taffy and Rachel, just wanted to give you a couple of minutes each to make any further comments as observers, because you guys have seen a range of facilitators out there. So was there anything you wanted to add to what we've discussed, or maybe highlight something that you've seen that you wanted to add into the call? Taffy, I'll get you to go first. Oh no, Rachel's unmuted. Go, Rachel.
One thing I've noticed, and it's a theme that's come through today, is that the groups that have been really successful have stayed pretty true to their ground rules and values at the start, and they've had a strong facilitator that has really enforced or supported that all the way through. And I've seen people do it really well, and I am quite inspired by them, because maybe I'm not that good at it myself. But the longevity of a group is really enhanced by the group identifying and committing and being held account to what they've always felt was important, and that whatever their motivation was at the start, and then reviewed it as it's gone.
Oh, awesome. Yep. I'm just capturing this in the chat box and I'll send the notes through later. Taffy, go.
Wonderful. Agree with Rachel's comments there. Some of the things that I've seen that have worked really well for facilitators and farmers is really having a good framework that people, as facilitators, you keep going to. We've got that training around, the pre-work and the post-work. Gives you a really good cycle in terms of connecting where you were last time and what are people going to do as a result of being there at an event today. So I think just that focus and having a structure which is built around that is something that I've seen, that has worked really well at events. That's my quick minute.
Nice, thank you. I'm just going to make sure I get that in. Awesome. Okay, I'm going to do a quick whip around. One thing that's either stood out from the conversation that we've had today, or maybe something that you're like, oh yeah, I need to just keep working on that, that you've been pondering as you've listened to what we've talked about. So I'm going to call on you and we'll go around. So I'm going to start with Briar again.
I think you're picking on me today, Denise.
No, I'll use some chocolate.
It's sitting on Lisa's desk if he wants some more. So I think, yeah, I had an interesting sort of end conversation in our breakout group about ground rules, because I was saying how I do struggle with people separating my role as beef and lamb extension person and just a facilitator of an action group, which are quite different things. So yeah, going back to the ground rules thanks Taffy for reminding me of that. I do tend to overlook them because it's quite a hard thing to get farmers to do when they're sort of not used to the concept, as is trying to get farmers to think strategic, sort of in that kind of fluffy zone when they're used to action.
Nice, that's fair. That's good. Sarah?
For me, it was around group culture and how important group culture actually is to the ongoing dynamics of the group and their ability to actually want to continue, and that the group is the one that actually builds that culture.
Yeah, that's cool. Awesome. Nick?
I'm just about going to say the same as what Sarah said. I think the culture is really critical, and I notice it within the group. There's one person who's in the group who's probably on the outer, who's quite different in their culture and their values, more different than the others, and keeping them engaged and on board is probably 30% of the work that you do at any meeting, and 30% of the work that you do between meetings.
Yeah, they can soak up a bit of time. Yep. Excellent. Simon?
What was my sort of takeout was the sort of the thinking around learning by doing. So I think Wayne talked about it, going along as a young consultant with a more senior consultant. You're either going to learn some good stuff or you're going to learn their bad habits, but I guess, and that's good. And it also, going along to other people's groups as an expert has been really useful, because I get to see them doing the things that I should be doing as a facilitator sometimes as well. So that learning by doing is a really important thing, and yeah, I think that's I really like the thoughts that people had on culture and setting ground rules, and I kind of agree with that. Where there is a really good underlying culture, it works. For Nick, I wonder whether the discussion was had right at the start of how you exit somebody from a group. Was there a process discussed about how that might have, been done, and what they might do to trigger that discussion being had, and who has it? Is it the chairman or the facilitator? All those things are part of that kind of ground rules. The other things that you don't discuss because they're awkward discussions, but can be useful to have them. Yeah.
Definitely. Thanks, Simon. Taffy?
Wayne mentioned that we're poor at selling ourselves as facilitators. And in earlier sessions, we heard about making the obvious obvious. And I think that's one area I'll focus on in terms of just dropping in some of those success stories, by just simply asking the question of the group, what is the one thing that you've got out of being a member of this action group that you've implemented or found that you've benefited your business? And I think that is a subtle way of just having that sales angle around the benefit of being members and of the facilitator's role in getting there.
Yeah, nice. Cool. What about you, Rachel?
All of the above.
Nice. Cool. And quickly, Lab, and then I'll call on Brendan and Courtney. Just any last thought, last word.
For me, the real strong thing that's come through is the culture and holding groups accountable to their original why, or at least renegotiating that why over time if it changes. And I know that this course that we've just been on with Bev and Etienne, Wegner Trainer, they talk about helping people to articulate the difference they want to make, and identifying that difference, and being aligned with the other people in the group who either want to make a similar difference or at least want to make a difference that they can help each other make. So yeah, I think it just comes back to the culture and the why. Why is this group together?
It's a good way of putting it, Lab. Cool. Conscious of time, so sorry, Brendan and Courtney, you're on the team, so you don't get much of a say. Anything you'd like to add, Courtney?
Nah, I think we've covered it pretty well.
Awesome. And Brendan?
Yeah, I will, if you don't mind, Denise,
It's
just
okay.
quickly. And I'm just going to build on labs because I totally agree with my notes I put down. I think it's all about ultimately what's the value that can be created, and therefore that, and then the culture around that. I think culture actually breeds the accountability. And when I think of that, I think about the process that wraps around us. And so a reflective sort of continuous improvement type approach and process to it. Therefore, the facilitating is all about the process. And I guess what I wanted to say, the thing that stuck out to me was a point Taffy made around consistency and staying true to that form and staying true to that process. And I think that's the big opportunity, is how you as an individual build your, strengthen your capability so that you stick true to that process and form, and that will just only continue to build that culture and that group environment.
Oh dear. Yep, no, all good. And Nick says he's lost his sound, so sorry, Nick. About to finish. So on that note, it is past 5 o'clock, so I do need to call it to an end. An hour goes so quickly, but thank you so much for joining us, and particularly to Rachel and Taffy as observers and bringing your experience and just being able to top up and from your experience and what you've seen out there. So we really appreciate that. Thank you so much. But to everyone else, thank you. Enjoy the rest of your day, and I'll send around some notes tomorrow for you from this. So thanks again for contributing.
Thank you for facilitating, Denise.
Yeah, thanks, Denise.
Thank you.
All good.